Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the SOMM TV podcast. I'm your host, Jason Wise. It's time for another episode of The Bullshit and Wine. It's been a while, and the bullshit has been collecting, and it's time to scoop it up and have a conversation. And in today's episode, we're going to have someone on who pulled an amazing stunt, a great prank, and probably one of the most wild stories I've heard in wine. What he did was he created a fake restaurant in Italy, took the lowest reviewed wines from Italy from a particular wine magazine, made them his wine list, and then submitted this for an award at said magazine. And what comes from there is just a hilarious, wild thing that exposes how ridiculous this industry truly is, to be frank. Before we get to this story, I do want to tell everybody we have a brand new feature-length film called Echoes of Wine coming to SOMM TV July 1st about the country of Georgia, the history, culture, and of course the wine, from a place that has spent 8,000 years living in the wine bottle. There is no place that loves and is more connected to wine than the country of Georgia. This is a film that I am just so proud to introduce. It will be coming to SOMM TV on July 1st, and if you're not a member, at checkout, go to sommtv.com and enter SOMMTV50, and you will be. You can get 50% off. Go to sommtv.com. For those of you that do subscribe, we say thank you so much, and we look forward to showing you that and several other films we have coming to SOMM TV this year. Without further ado, my conversation about the bullshit in wine, a very special edition. Oh boy. I want to welcome you, Robin Goldstein, to the SOMM TV podcast. Can you do me a favor and introduce yourself?
Thanks, Jason. It's nice to be here. My name is Robin Goldstein. I'm a research economist at UC Davis in the Department of Agriculture and Resource Economics. I am director of the Cannabis Economics Group, and also I'm deputy director of the Robert Mondavi Institute Center for Wine Economics. So wine is what got me into economics to begin with, and specifically wine bullshit is what got me into both wine and economics.
Well, good. It's probably what's kept you there as well, I would hope. This is one of the most legendary stories in wine. I want to set this up, and I'm going to butcher it, but basically, what you did is you created a fake restaurant with an arguably really shitty wine list, submitted it to Wine Spectator for one of their quote-unquote awards, if I'm saying this correctly. I want to tell the story of how you did this, what you did, and how you came up with this idea. So before we do this, I want you to just tell me, what is this prestigious award of excellence that Wine Spectator has? Just so you can set up that, maybe set up what is Wine Spectator. Maybe we just start at the very beginning for people who have never heard of this publication.
Sure. So Wine Spectator is the world's leading wine magazine, both in print and online. They have been, for a couple decades, several decades, they've been running a program called the Awards of Excellence, which are supposed to honor the world's greatest wine restaurants, restaurants with the best wine lists, best wine programs. They award about 4,000 restaurants every year with an award of excellence. And they, the restaurants put it up on their wall. They get a fancy looking certificate and frame it, put it on their wall. It's considered a prestigious honor in the wine restaurant world, or it was. And maybe it was considered more prestigious a little bit before what I did. But it's still going strong, this program. And I'd been kind of reading every year the Wine Spectator issue would come out. Here are the world's best wine restaurants. And I'd look through the pages and I'm like, And it would be, these random chain restaurants that I've been to, and it didn't seem like such a great wine list there. I wonder, what does it take to get the award? Like, what are the standards of these expert judges from the world's leading wine magazine to determine which are the top wine restaurants deserving of this award? I started by just asking them, what are the standards? How many restaurants apply? What percentage of restaurants that apply for the award get it? They wouldn't provide any information on that. I did a little bit of research, discovered that what you need to do to apply was fill out, some forms. You send them a copy of your restaurant, the wine list, of course, and some your food menu, the website, and very importantly, your check for $250, which is the entry fee.
Sure.
Doing some math in my head, I was like, $250 times 4,000, 5,000 restaurants. Not sure how many applied, but that's more than $1 million they make from this program every year. So you can advertise in Wine Spectator for probably more than $250. But I was wondering, what are the standards for this award? Does it represent the opinions of expert judges, or is it kind of more of a form of advertising?
I love this so much. All right, so you don't have a restaurant. I'm taking it. You were an academic at this point, right?
I wasn't an academic yet. I was actually running a publishing company called Fearless Critic, which is a food and wine publishing company I started. We were doing restaurant reviews. I was in the business of reviewing restaurants, and we had, incognito. We were very serious about being unbiased. We never took free meals, and we went into restaurants incognito and reviewed them. I was overseeing staff of food critics in a bunch of different cities and publishing print guidebooks. And then I was starting to get into wine publishing. I wrote a book called The Wine Trials, where we tested cheap against expensive wines. I was still kind of new to the world of wine, though. I wasn't in any way a wine insider. I'd never been in the wine business. So as I started to learn more about the wine business, or the wine world, I should say, I got particularly interested in like wine snobbery, wine bullshit. What awards are real? What do ratings mean? Kind of some academic questions. So I really thought of this from the beginning as an academic exploration. Although I wasn't yet an academic, it was an experiment. I wanted to see what does it take to get a Wine Spectator Award of Excellence. And so the first thing I needed to do to test this theory, or to test this question, was I needed a restaurant, and I didn't have a restaurant. So I asked my friend Giuliano, a friend of mine who lived in Milan, if I could use his address for a restaurant. I thought, I have Italian roots. I love Italy's, my favorite country to visit. And so I thought it would be nice to have a restaurant in Italy. And you also needed a mailing address for your application, and to receive, if you get the award, you have to receive it somewhere. And so Giuliano offered his apartment as the restaurant space. In Giuliano's apartment, I wouldn't say there's a big wine list or a big wine cellar. He had like 2 bottles of wine in his fridge and one half-drunk, 2-week-old box of Montepulciano d'Abruzzo. But we decided to represent his wine cellar a little bit differently than that. I made up a name for the restaurant, Osteria L'Intrepido, which is in Italian meaning osteria, or fearless restaurant, to name it after my book series. And one of the fun parts of it was concocting the food menu, because I'd seen a lot of so we made it into this kind of a little bit of a parody of your average upscale, like one Michelin star restaurant in Milan, and all importantly, the wine list. So in order to construct what I called the reserve wine list, this was all in Italian, so Giuliano helped correct my Italian mistakes and stuff, but we made the Vini Riserva, and I went through the Wine Spectator archives. I had an account on winespectator.com, and so I went through the list of all the Italian wines they'd ever reviewed going back to the 1970s, and I picked all the worst wines that they'd ever reviewed, like under 80 points, like undrinkable, smells like turpentine, tasted twice, confirmed the faults are there, and I just made a whole reserve list of almost nothing but those wines. And then I attached that to the application along with our restaurant menu. I made a fake website for the restaurant, and then I got a e-phone number, and got Giuliano to go on this, have this voicemail. It just goes straight to voicemail, and it's just Giuliano's voice saying, "Hello, you've reached Osteria L'Intrepido. We're closed for vacation." And
no message, no nothing. Just we're closed.
It just says we're closed for vacation.
That honestly is the most accurate thing that could happen.
Yeah, that is absolutely the normal thing that happens when you try to call a restaurant in Italy in around 2008. This was a common thing. They go on vacation for months. You never know when. So, I put some rubric of some sign that this restaurant existed on the internet, but that was it. That's all I did. The whole thing took me like a day. I mean, a few hours. Honestly, it's like 10 hours of effort that I went into creating this restaurant. It was just a simple website. Giuliano and I had fun making the menu. Coming through the archives took a couple days, but I spent less than a week on this project, which is much less time than your average restaurant spends doing the work necessary to get an award of excellence, I imagine. So, this is really a shortcut to greatness.
You are a man after my own heart. So you submit all your stuff, and most importantly, of course, you pay your $250.
Absolutely.
You send this in. Let me just ask really quick. You didn't have to pick the worst wines. That just seems like that's not just sticking the knife in. That's turning it ever so slightly to pick the wines that Wine Spectator has already said are bad, which means, I'm going to be mean here, but means they didn't pay, right? I mean, a lot of these wine reviews, there's a lot of arguments that there's a little bit of pay for play on these things, right? I mean,
I have no idea how Wine Spectator does wine reviews. They claim to review blind in some sense, but a lot of wine magazines, the problem with so-called blind wine reviews is that they'll taste a flight of 2010 Chateauneuf de Pape, and they'll know that these are all expensive wines, and so there's this very high correlation between prices and ratings. I consider that really a form of non-blind tasting. When you know wine's expensive, that's when you're super biased. The wine tastes different. You know what to look for. A lot of wine critics talk about typicity. Oh, we can't taste a wine or evaluate a wine unless we know about its typicity. So we have to know where it comes from. We have to know the vintage. We have to know essentially the price. But I don't think that you can be unbiased once you know that a wine's cheap or expensive. And so they're not really tasting blind in that sense. There's Wine Spectator does accept advertising from wineries. I don't have any way to know if there's pay to play in terms of getting reviewed or not. But I thought this was an easy experiment I could do to at least see what the standards were for the restaurant awards, which would reflect maybe on their standards and ethics more generally.
Okay, so you send it all in, you pay your money, and then your expectation is this is a cute idea, but then what happens?
Yeah, so I was, and one reason I put in the bad wines is that I had a couple of research questions. Let's say one is, do you have to have a good wine list to get a Wine Spectator Award of Excellence? The second is, do you have to exist to get a Wine Spectator Award of Excellence? And so, testing both of those questions, I was honestly very curious if they would actually review the wine list and say, at least according to your own standard, who's to say whether these wines are good or bad? But they said they were bad. These are their own ratings. So by their own standard, do they just go through a wine list and actually check the ratings of those wines to see, or does the quality of the wines, according to them, have nothing to do with getting the award? So I didn't know what would happen, and I sent it in. I sent the packet. You had to send this all by snail mail at the time. So I sent, all the materials to Giuliano by airmail to Italy, and then he put it all in a package and sent it back to the US. So it was a package coming from Italy. We didn't want it to look suspicious because the restaurant in Italy wouldn't be sending their stuff from the US. I didn't hear anything for several months. And then, about 3 months after I applied, suddenly a voicemail showed up on the number that I'd set up saying we're closed for vacation. It did say, if you want to leave a message after the beep. Okay. So I get this audio file comes into my email saying you have a message in your Osteria L'Intrepido voicemail box. Hello, this is Wine Spectator calling. We're calling to congratulate you. You've won an award of excellence. We're also calling to see if you're interested in taking out an ad for your restaurant in the issue of the magazine in August when we're going to announce the awards. And I looked it up, and those ads cost $3,000 to $8,000 for page. For a small one, it was $3,000. It was $8,000 for full page, something like that. And
it's way
in
more
retrospect, I'm sure. In retrospect, I regret not taking out an ad with a picture of me with a chef's hat or something, being like, "Hey," but.
You should. Oh my God!
I was still I didn't want to rock the boat at this point. Still, I was like, okay, I didn't tell anyone. Almost no one in the world except for Giuliano knew I'd done this. Didn't tell my best friends or family. I didn't want anyone to out this before the issue came out. And so, I didn't respond to the message. And then in August rolls around, and I'm about to present another paper at the American Association of Wine Economists. This was about my blind tasting experiment called Do More Expensive Wines Taste Better? And so I go up to make this presentation in front of maybe 100 economists, but they're all wine economists and wine people, and there's some media there. And so I said, before I present my paper, I just wanted to brief you on some ongoing research, some working research that I've done that's not yet completed. The research question is, what does it take to get a Wine Spectator Award of Excellence? And then I put up, and this is the first reveal of it, I put up, and 10 minutes before I made the presentation, I changed the fake website of the restaurant to be a blog entry about everything I'd done with all the materials I'd submitted and a guide to what Wine Spectator had given each of these wines in their ratings. And so I presented all that as a slideshow and told everyone the whole story. I put a picture of and by the way, Giuliano in the meantime had received his certificate in the mail. It was in Italy. So he took a picture of it. So I had a photo of the certificate of the Award of Excellence. And so I put that on the slides and announced it to everyone. People loved it. It turned out that Orly Ashenfelter, who was the founder of the American Association of Wine Economists and one of the most prominent economists in the country, he had this 30-year-old feud with Wine Spectator going back to when he used to have this wine newsletter called Liquid Assets. They didn't like some of his academic work, so he loved it. And so like everyone there just started blasting it out. And like within a couple hours, I was getting called from like media everywhere, and like the thing blew up very quickly.
I'm so mad that I didn't do this. First of all, I'm going to try to keep myself out of this. I'm just going to say Wine Spectator is not a fan of me. They don't
Okay.
they don't like the SOMM movies. They don't like what we do. They don't like any competition. They don't want anybody else to tell you what to drink. What a business thing to get people to pay you to essentially be your best lead for further for further leads. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
Glenn Ross. It's like these are the great leads, and they're
Yeah.
literally paying
The
you to
hot
give you
leads.
the box of the good leads. It's an
Yeah.
astounding thing. I just want you to know, if you would like, I will photograph you in a chef's hat and Photoshop. I will Photoshop a Wine Spectator ad for you that I will do pro bono for you. I just want a copy of it to put on my wall by me. So okay,
Fantastic.
so this goes out, and you've got 100 wine economists in a room, and I can only imagine you've got to have like a thought in your brain of, I'm doing something that's going to get me in a little bit of trouble, right? I mean, before you answer that, just a really quick interruption. Wanted to tell you that if you are a winery, have a wine club, have a mailing list, and you want to supply all of your members with a complimentary subscription to SOMM TV, we can work that out for you. Email us hello@sommtv.com, and we can work out bulk subscriptions for SOMM TV. We have incredible films coming, including July 1st, our brand new film about Georgia, Echoes of Wine. We have our Judgment of Paris film. We have a new SOMM film coming, which the announcement is, I can't do it right now, but it is coming. And there's a lot more. So please, if you are interested in giving your members something that makes them sticky, makes them love being a part of your membership, give them SOMM TV. Email us, hello@sommtv.com. All right, back to the story. What are your thoughts on Wine Spectator at this time? Why are you doing this to these poor people? This innocent, benevolent wine magazine. Why do they deserve this? Why would you do this to them?
I think that it's not just them that are participating in what I see as a, pay-to-play kind of biased form of supposed expert opinion that's really just advertising. I see this across the wine media then as I still do now. There's lots of different forms of it, but yeah, in a way it was arbitrary to pick Wine Spectator as a target. I happen to, be familiar with this awards program, and just it seems like so obviously full of shit, these choices they were making of these restaurants. And I'd heard from restaurants, oh yeah, all you have to do is send in 250 and you get the award. I mean, it's funny, but and the days and weeks after that, I got a lot of emails from restaurants, including top restaurants, saying, "Thank you for doing this. We're so sick of being extorted by, we felt like we were had to participate in this because other people do, but now you've exposed it, and now I don't feel like I need to apply anymore." There was like the sort of narrow purpose of this exact program. I wanted restaurant customers who are going to spend like their hard-earned money. You're going into like expensive restaurants, spend a lot of your money, maybe to celebrate an anniversary or a birthday, and people, in good faith, take these awards seriously. They respect that these are real wine authorities reviewing these places, reviewing these wine programs, and giving them expert advice that helps them decide where to spend their money. That has real impact on people. Like, it's not cheap to go out to a nice dinner, and so I wanted to clue consumers into the fact that they shouldn't trust those results that were posing as judgment when they were really just advertising, and maybe in a larger sense to question this kind of information you're getting when it's coming from a magazine that's taking ads from the places, or taking money from the places that they're claiming to review. Take it with a grain of salt. Look past maybe some of those awards and look deeper into, make your own decision about where you want to spend your money more thoughtfully. I think it could have been, I think there's a lot of other wine media outlets that there's a lot of talk about how in order to get your wine reviewed, what do you have to do to get your wine reviewed? People talk about, I don't think there's so many cases necessarily of like someone slipping $100 to some critic to say, give me an 89 instead of an 87 or something. But it's like more just like, which wines do they choose to even consider? A lot of the ratings outlets don't publish very many low reviews. They mostly just publish high reviews. So the real challenge is getting in the door.
Well, I
And
can tell you,
yeah,
I that's one place I kind of sympathize with Wine Spectator or any of these other publications. There's a lot of wines out there. We have flirted with how do we turn the system upside down and do unbiased reviews. And the minute we opened up that spigot, there were 1,000 wines that wanted to send it to us, and we just couldn't handle it. I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do it. And now
yeah,
I want to be very clear to people listening. I do not consider myself a wine expert. I am very passionate about this topic. I love the places I go. I'm obsessed with history, and I do really love wine. I think there is a dangerous precedent to be saying you should drink what I say because I'm an expert. Now, if you want to drink what I say because I like the story, I like the way it tastes, all that stuff, that's fine. It's a very difficult thing for us at SOMM TV to go, how do you recommend a wine to somebody without it being completely biased? It's very tough. And that's why we don't do, I mean, when we do at the end of the year, we do our top 10 wines of the year. I can promise you 90% of that's based on their story. We filmed it, we worked with them. I fell in love with whatever it was. That's probably not the right way to review a wine, but they turned into our top wines of the year because of our experience. And I don't know how these people taste 50 wines in an afternoon and say this one is 2
yeah.
points better than that one. Maybe they have some superpower that I'm unaware of a capability. Have you
Yeah.
tried to put yourself in their shoes, Robin, and go, I'm going to taste a bunch of wines, forget about the money involved, but at least taste 500 wines in an afternoon and say, I think this is the best or the worst?
I've definitely been a judge in wine competitions and tasted, I wouldn't say 500, but I've tasted certainly dozens of wines in a day. And, it's challenging. You get palate fatigue. There's a lot of arbitrariness or bias that comes from, that you can't really control, that comes from what flight a wine gets put into or what order you taste in. In my research, UC Davis and wine competitions that I've been had the chance to have a role in designing, we try to run it more like a scientific experiment where we have we use sensory science method and we adjust for things like tasting order. So everyone gets served the wine. Every subject in the experiment gets served the wine in a different order, and everyone gets everything's kind of randomly assigned. There's a higher standard of blindness. No one has any idea anything about the wine, not just what the brand is, but they don't know what the price level is. They don't know what the region is, anything like that. And I think another important thing is to have more people than one taste it. One of the biggest problems um, with wine reviews is that it's often just one or maybe two, at most maybe a panel of 3 or 4 or 5 people tasting the wine. It's often just one. And although I totally respect and love so many of these critics, and I read their reviews and I use them sometimes when I find someone who shares my taste, it's hard to say my opinion is objective, and it's not. To me, anyone's liking of a wine is a totally subjective thing. Whether you and I taste the same wine, how it tastes to you and how it tastes to me, we have no way of knowing, you know, if that
Well,
has
also,
anything
I
to do
mean,
with each
you
other.
got in a fight with your wife in the morning before you go and taste this wine, or, just
Yeah.
you didn't have any food and you're on an empty stomach. I mean, the things are so much more than just subjective. But let me ask you, I mean, you could turn that on its head. It's like, isn't who made the wine and how much it costs part of it? I mean, isn't that something that should be taken into consideration? Or is it impossible for the human being to go, this wine's $100, I can judge it with that and against that? I mean, I don't know. I'm just
If
it's such a tricky slope. You can always what if
yeah,
this whole thing.
when I'm enjoying a wine at dinner with my friends, I don't usually taste blind unless it's like a bunch of really wine geeks who want to do this kind of an experiment out of it. But most nights, if I drink a bottle of wine, I want to know what it is, because when you know what you're drinking, you get a different kind of intellectual enjoyment out of it. Knowing where it came from, knowing who made it, and the story behind it is part of the fun of enjoying wine. So, absolutely, I'm not saying everyone should just go around tasting all the wine blind. That would be missing a huge amount of what's fun about wine and what's beautiful about wine, which is
Mhm.
human stories and the hard work that goes into this, and the story of the region and terroir. But when you're in the business, you're presenting yourself as being the business of numerically evaluating wines against each other and ranking them or rating them in a numerical way. I think that you can't you have to rid yourself of some of those biases. It's not the appropriate context for knowing the whole story if you're testing wines against each other, because you're claiming to evaluate the liquid inside the bottle. But if really what you're doing is you're evaluating the bottle and the label and the story and all the words, that's a different thing. And so let's just be clear about what we're doing. If we're going to tell a story what a wine is, when it came from, great. Be clear you're not tasting blind, and don't give it a number and compare it with anything else. Just say, here's a great wine. I love this story. I've enjoyed it with my steak. That's fantastic. Nothing wrong with that at all. And there's a lot of great wine writers and critics where that's exactly what they do. And I I respect also the people who are rating the wine numerically and making more effort than most to be unbiased and to taste blind and not to accept advertising. Like the Wine Advocate, for example, has never accepted wine advertising in their whole history.
It's fascinating. I think people would be surprised to learn that, honestly. The Wine Advocate is one of these publications that I think is at the forefront of pissing people off with their ratings. And yet, what you said is true. I mean, they are not taking money for any of this stuff. All right, wait. So I gotta know. Obviously, Wine Spectator must have become aware of this immediately after this conference, right? They must have. So when is the first time you found out that Wine Spectator knows what you did?
I mean, it was within hours. First thing they did was they revoked the award. They took it off their website. The print issue had just come out at this point. So I waited till the print issue was already on the newsstands to reveal it, because I knew they'd obviously take it off their website. So I wanted the evidence that this wine had won the award, like, indelible. And so everyone was already holding the print magazine. They couldn't, tear out the page. They revoked the award. They put a big statement on their website smearing me. They said it was a hoax by a, malicious prankster. And to me, I call it a bullshit on bullshit technique of investigation, because, yes, I used bullshit in my method of investigating what they were doing. They refused to answer my questions about how this award worked or how their judges were evaluating these wine lists. And so I thought that using my own bullshit was the best way of testing theirs. And I think that although you can say what I did was misleading, I think it was much more misleading what they were doing, which is misleading the public into thinking that this was a awards program judged by experts, when really it was just advertising. So I used a bullshit technique to expose what I thought was a larger and much more meaningful and impactful form of bullshit that was actually harming the industry and harming good faith restaurants who didn't feel like paying $250. Everyone who didn't pay the $250 every year, they're struggling to break even as a restaurant, pay their rent. $250 is not nothing. All the restaurants that couldn't afford that were at a disadvantage against these other restaurants that were getting this award by paying. And so Wine Spectator of course I was worried that they'd come after me but sue me or whatever. But I think that they quickly realized that that the more that they did, I got so much it was just overwhelming swell of support from the restaurant industry, from the wine industry. People loved what I did overwhelmingly, except for Wine Spectator. And
I'm not surprised.
And people kept putting it up on the Wikipedia entry for Wine Spectator. Someone, from some IP address kept taking it down, and then it would go back up the next day. I never touched the page myself, but this is, the public wanted, a lot of people out there wanted other people to know what had happened. And I think that Wine Spectator realized sooner or later, to continue to try to attack me personally or to go after me legally or anything like that, they would have just had the story would have gotten even bigger, and I would have gotten even more support from all over the place. It would have just made the problem worse for them. I think what they should have done is, in response to this, is say, "Oh, thanks for exposing a problem with the way that we're evaluating these wine lists. Let's look into our methods and let's improve this program." They didn't do that at all. They didn't even attempt to explain how this happened, that this restaurant got this award, or explain how the process worked or what their standards actually were. They just tried to attack me on like a kind of a personal level and say this was a hoax. It doesn't mean anything. And there was a little bit of a debate. There was an op-ed in the New York Times and the Boston Globe. I think the Times was an interesting one. There was this guy named Stanley Fish, who was like a philosopher who wrote op-eds for the Times. And he compared me to this guy named Alan Sokal, who was this physicist from like back in the 90s, I think. This physicist had gotten a paper in a sociology journal called Social Text that was like one of these academic journals that's like so full of like jargon and buzzwords that you read it and you're like, I just read a page and I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about. And like but these are like PhDs and like people are getting tenure based on getting publications in this social text. You're getting promoted in the sociology department. And And so Sokal just wrote this complete bullshit article, like saying that the trying to connect quantum mechanics to like gender theory or something. I don't know what it was. I forget the details, but it was one of the most hilarious things I'd ever read. And so Sokal, and so this Stanley Fish was like comparing me to Sokal, and he's like, hoaxsters, and Fish was a little bit sort of critical of what I'd done. He was like, the hoaxes tell you more about the hoaxer than they do about the real world. Most people go around their lives assuming good intent on the part of other people, and so when someone comes at you with a not good intent, or not necessarily on your side, and tries to like pull a fast one, slip something past you, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have any standards or whatever. But I hear that argument, but I don't agree. I think that sometimes you need to use those techniques and do something that's kind of uh, it speaks for itself. If this restaurant can get an award, if this paper can get published in Social Text, then it means we should really be questioning what are the standards. Is this award meaningful? Is this publication meaningful? I think sometimes you just need to use guerrilla methods to do investigative work.
I don't know if you would say this, but I would say you're a very important person at probably the world's leading viticultural university and many other things that UC Davis is very famous for. But what is the relationship with Wine Spectator now that you're in a position that you're in right now? This has got to be a weird situation. Does Wine Spectator ever do anything with UC Davis or no?
I have nothing to do with that. I'm not in the Department of Viticulture and Enology. In my work, I have no connection with Wine Spectator, so
but this doesn't continue to
world.
get you in any kind of trouble at all. I mean, I'm sure there's got to be some overlap, right? Have they talked to you directly about this? I guess have you like sat down with Marvin Shankin and been like, hey, sorry, buddy, you guys like fist bump ever? Like you sitting with James Molworth and have a glass of wine? Like what do we, you got anything? No.
I've never had any contact with Shankin. I've never had any contact with Wine Spectator, and I'm not. If Wine Spectator is doing any stuff with Davis, I'm not aware of what the connection is or anything. And I have plenty of colleagues in different departments who do different kinds of work, and I also don't mean to say that Wine Spectator doesn't ever do anything useful. Like Wine Spectator, the best thing about Wine Spectator, the best thing about what they've done over the years is they've helped promote wine in general. Like, the wine world is challenged right now. It's been a really tough couple of years for wine, as you know, and it's like, wine sales are down, alcohol consumption is declining, wine consumption is declining even more than some other forms of alcohol.
Sure.
And, and there's a sense in which we're all in it together. I also don't know who's running Wine Spectator now, or, who's in charge of that program now. Maybe they've improved their standards. I don't have anything to say about Wine Spectator now. This is something that I did in 2008. I mean, I could run another investigative experiment now with them or with someone else and see what the standards are these days. But in wine, we need to all be in it together at the moment and say, anyone who's promoting and supporting wine around the world is maybe doing some good. I think that the danger for some of these magazines and some of these media outlets is when they come off as snobby. I think snobbery is like this big threat to wine. I think one of the reasons that you have declining consumption or declining interest in wine is because wine's perceived as this sort of stodgy, snobby thing where you list 20 descriptors and you have to be an expert to have good judgment. And if you like white Zinfandel, you're an idiot, and you're made to feel condescended to. Yeah. And I think that so when the writing is pretentious and snobby, then I think it can do damage. When the writing is just like, hey, here's like a fun wine in a fun region, and here's a story of a person who made it, that's great. And Wine Spectator does both of those. And Wine Spectator is not one person; it's a whole staff of writers, and some of them do great work, and others, whoever was running the program, evaluating restaurants in 2008 was not doing great work, in my opinion. But I think it's important to remember also that this is a collection of individuals, and that they all have their own ethical standards and purposes. And that these magazines over time have the choice every single day with every issue to do good ethical work or stuff that helps the industry or helps great winemakers make a living or be just on the take. That's their choice every day, and I hope they're making better choices now than they were then.
Yeah. Well, can I by chance buy a hat or a shirt or anything of your restaurant? Because I'm a fan. I rated it 5 stars on Yelp just recently. So
Oh, thank you. We got some reservation. We got like 1 or 2 on the e-voice mail. We got like 1 or 2 people asking to make a reservation here and there. You can come over. We can do a pop-up, and I'm happy to serve you Osteria Intrepido tasting menu.
I'm not going to lie to you. This might be the greatest idea for SOMM TV that we've had in years. So you better be careful what you offer.
All right, you make the chef's hat, and I'll wear it, and I'll actually serve you dinner, and I'll pair it with some wines, and maybe I'll tell you what they are, maybe I won't.
Sounds good. I can tell you as somebody, as long as you pay me, I'll give them 100 points. I'm a big fan. I got to tell you, Robin, you are a man after my own heart, as I said earlier, and I'm really proud of the work you've done. I will say, I strangely feel a little bad for Wine Spectator in this story, but yet at the same time, I agree with you wholeheartedly. So what an amazing story. I hope that you do not target me next. Thank you for your work.
I'm an academic. It's all for science.
I only lied about being a thief. I'm not a liar and a thief. So, all right, it's good stuff. All right,
well,
thank you, Robin.
Thank you for your work, too. I appreciate your work to expose bullshit all over the place where you see it and find it, and fight the good fight.
This is why we don't make any money. Anyways, I appreciate it, Robin. We'll talk very soon.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for listening. And, honestly, these are my favorite episodes. I just love the bullshit in wine. There's bullshit in every industry, so don't think wine's unique. But man, sometimes it's just a hilarious thing to do these conversations. Oh boy. I want to thank my producer, John Adams. I want to thank you for listening. If you love this podcast, please give us a great review wherever you listen, whether it's Spotify or Apple Pods or Google. Give us a great review. It really means a lot to us. And don't forget, we have a brand new film about the culture, history, and of course, wine of Georgia, Echoes of Wine, coming July 1st to SOMM TV. Go to sommtv.com, and if you're not a subscriber, enter SOMM TV 50 to get 50% off and become one. You should be. It supports all of this, including the podcast. We really appreciate it. Everybody be safe. And, drink a poorly reviewed wine. We'll talk very soon.